Your bed is taking you 4 minutes to make every morning, and that is exactly the problem. Not because 4 minutes is a lot of time. Because the way most people make a bed in the West was never designed to do anything except look acceptable. It was not designed to change your morning, your sleep, or the way your bedroom feels at the end of an exhausting day. There is a different method, used quietly in Japanese homes for generations, that takes 90 seconds, not 4 minutes, and does something the Western version never even attempts. I started using it 11 weeks ago. My mornings have not been the same since, and the strangest part is that the change had almost nothing to do with the bed actually looking tidy. Stay with me until the third step, because that is the one nobody talks about, the one that has nothing to do with sheets or corners at all. Before I explain the method itself, I want to explain why bed making even matters enough to spend 90 seconds on, because most people assume it is purely cosmetic, a habit your parents taught you that has no real function beyond appearances. Japanese household philosophy disagrees, and it disagrees specifically through a concept called Kejime, the marking of a clear boundary between one state and another, between sleep and waking, between rest and the start of responsibility. A bed that stays unmade blurs that boundary. The room you slept in and the room you are about to live your day in remain, visually, the exact same room, which means some small part of the mind never fully completes the transition out of sleep. The Western 4-minute method focuses entirely on appearance, tucking, fluffing, arranging decorative pillows in a specific order. The Japanese 90-second method focuses entirely on completing that boundary as fast and as cleanly as possible, and it turns out speed and intention matter more than polish ever did. The first step of the method is what is called the Hane Okoshi, the wake fold, and it happens before your feet even touch the floor. While you are still sitting on the edge of the bed, you fold back the top sheet and blanket in a single motion, exposing the undersheet completely, rather than leaving them however they landed when you sat up. This single motion, done from a seated position before standing, takes roughly 8 seconds and accomplishes something the Western method does not. It lets the bedding begin airing out immediately, while you get ready for the rest of your morning, rather than being smoothed over while still warm and slightly damp from a night of sleep. Japanese household care places real importance on this airing step, called kenki, ventilation, because bedding that is closed up while still warm traps moisture, which over time affects both the freshness of the sheets and the air quality of the room itself. The Western 4-minute method skips this entirely, pulling everything tight and smooth within minutes of waking, sealing in exactly the moisture that should have been allowed to escape. The second step is the only part of the process that involves actual tucking, and it takes about 25 seconds. Rather than tucking all 4 corners with equal effort, the Japanese method focuses entirely on the 2 corners nearest the head of the bed, pulling the fitted sheet taut there and securing the top sheet with a simple hospital-style fold only on those 2 corners. The foot of the bed is left loose, untucked, deliberately. This sounds like cutting a corner, but it is actually based on something practical. The head of the bed is where disturbance concentrates overnight, where pillows shift and sheets bunch from the movement of your head and shoulders, while the foot of the bed sees comparatively little disruption. Securing the high disturbance zone and leaving the low disturbance zone loose means the bed looks resolved without requiring effort spent on a part that barely needed it. This is the same logic, applied to bedding, that shows up everywhere in Japanese household care, effort placed precisely where it produces a result, not spread evenly across a task regardless of where the actual disorder lives. The third step is the one I told you to wait for, because it is not physical at all. After the sheets and blanket are arranged, you pause, standing at the foot of the bed, for roughly 5 seconds, and you look at it. Not to inspect it for flaws. To register, consciously, that this task is finished. This pause has a name in Japanese practice, ichi-dan oki, literally one step settling, a brief moment of acknowledgement that closes a completed action before moving to the next one. It sounds almost too small to matter, and that was exactly my assumption before I tried it. But this is where the psychiatrist Dr. John Sharp's research on completion behavior becomes relevant again, the finding that a consciously registered completed task creates measurably more momentum for the next task than a task finished on autopilot, without any moment of acknowledgement. Most people make their bed while already mentally 3 tasks ahead, checking a phone, thinking about breakfast, and the bed gets finished without ever being noticed as finished. The 5-second pause is what converts an unconscious habit into a conscious closed loop, and the research on the Zeigarnik effect suggests that distinction is not trivial. An open loop nags at attention even when the task was technically completed, because the brain never registered the completion in the first place. The fourth and final step is placing exactly one object on the bed with intention, traditionally a single folded item, a robe, a cushion, sometimes nothing more than smoothing one pillow into a centered position, what is sometimes called the shiage, the finishing touch. This is the only decorative element in the entire method, and it is limited to one object on purpose. The Western 4-minute method often involves arranging 4, 5, sometimes 6 decorative pillows in a specific layered order, which is precisely the kind of daily labor I removed from my own home in a previous video, 11 pillows that needed repositioning every single day. The Japanese method makes a different choice, one object, placed once, communicating that the room has been attended to without requiring ongoing maintenance throughout the day. Add the 4 steps together, the 8-second wake fold, the 25-second targeted tuck, the 5-second pause, and roughly 50 seconds for the final smoothing and single object placement, and the entire method lands at approximately 90 seconds, a little over a third of the time the Western 4-minute version takes, while accomplishing something the longer version never attempts: actual ventilation of the bedding and a conscious marker of completion rather than just a tidy appearance. Here's what changed for me over 11 weeks, and I want to be specific because I tracked it. My mornings did not become longer or more elaborate. If anything, I gained back roughly 2.5 minutes every single day, which over 11 weeks adds up to a little under 3.5 hours, not a dramatic number on its own. The real change was not the time. It was the 5-second pause, which I started noticing carried into the rest of my morning. Registering one completed task, consciously, at the very start of the day, made the next small task easier to start, and the one after that. By the second week, I noticed I was making coffee with less of the foggy, undirected drift I usually felt in the first 20 minutes after waking. By the fourth week, the difference was clear enough that I started paying attention to days when I skipped the method entirely, traveling, sick, simply rushed, and those mornings reliably felt less anchored, more scattered, in a way I had never previously connected to something as small as how I left my bed. There is also the ventilation piece, which I was skeptical of until I actually compared it. Sheets made the Western way, smoothed and tucked within minutes of waking while still warm, felt noticeably less fresh by the end of the week than sheets that had been folded back and allowed to air for even 20 or 30 minutes each morning before the room was tidied later in the day. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is a small, measurable difference in how the bedroom smelled and felt by Thursday, the kind of difference that is easy to dismiss until you live with the alternative for 2 straight months. I think the deeper reason this method works is the same reason most of these small Japanese household habits work. It treats the bed not as a piece of furniture to be arranged correctly, but as the literal threshold between 2 states of being, asleep and awake, rested and responsible. The Western 4-minute method optimizes for how the bed looks to someone walking past the open door. The Japanese 90-second method optimizes for what happens inside the person who made it, the ventilation that protects their sleep environment for the following night, and the brief, deliberate pause that tells their own mind, clearly, that one thing is finished before the day asks for the next. So here is everything in one breath. Fold back the top sheet and blanket from a seated position before you stand, letting the bedding begin airing immediately. Tuck only the 2 corners nearest the head of the bed, where disturbance actually concentrates, and leave the foot of the bed loose. Pause for 5 seconds at the foot of the bed and consciously register that the task is finished. And place exactly one object with intention as the only decorative element, nothing layered, nothing requiring daily rearrangement. Now I want to hear from you. Tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, try the 8-second wake fold from a seated position, just that one step, nothing more. Tell me in the comments whether you noticed the difference in how the room felt by the end of the day. And if you know someone who spends 10 minutes every morning fluffing decorative pillows into a specific order, send this to them. They might be 90 seconds away from a morning that finally feels like it started somewhere instead of just beginning by accident. This is Tokyo Horizon. I will see you in the next one.